That's a really strong question, Kevin. One I'm, a little scary to answer, right? Because there are always people who are can be marginalized or dismissed, and I think that certainly can happen to people with disabilities, in my experience. And I would say they um, can contribute as well and more so than so many of the rest of us. I guess I would say that, my mother was a speech pathologist for her career. Um, and as a kid, she worked in a school for people with developmental disabilities. At least that's what it was called at the time. And I was exposed to that working environment in a way. And I remember being pretty young. I think I was probably 6 when she started to work there. And it was really scary and intimidating to me to come into a school of people who felt different to me. And I was afraid I might hurt somebody, or something. And so I grew up around that more so, and realized how much my mother loved and appreciated people from everywhere, in all walks of life. And so was kind of exposed early on to people with disabilities, and got to see how much they impacted her. And really, it was in my first real job out of college that I kind of jumped forward there from childhood. But we had a janitor who kind of came at night, and he was on the autism spectrum, and people kind of just ignored him to a large degree. He was somebody who'd been there for a long time, and I remember early on getting a warning from my boss, hey, he'll read your mail, he'll dig through the trash and see things. So, be careful what you kind of put out there, because Donnie comes at night. And people kind of were maybe a little bothered by him to some degree. And what ended up happening is a friend of mine at work, we were going to lunch one day, and he said, hey, let's invite Donnie. And I said, okay. So we invite Donnie, and he came along. And over the course of the next 2 years, we got to be really good friends with him. He was somebody who didn't like to change. And he actually had really opposed some of the changes we were trying to bring into this. It was a nonprofit at the time. And what was interesting was the friendship we built with him. He ended up coming to our kids' birthday parties and going out to dinner with us for on anniversaries and things with my wife and I and our family. And we built an incredible relationship with him. And he reminded me, he was a better friend to me than I had been to anybody, I think. And it definitely changed my perspective, because what happened over time was his buy-in to what we were doing grew pretty significantly because of the relationship we had, and he became our greatest ally and advocate for what we were doing in that organization and that community. And it when people started to see his enthusiasm for it, it became really contagious. I'd tried to get things moving hard for a long time, but when he got on board, it changed the way people thought about things. And he still, that was 15, 20 years ago. Wow. He still calls me on the anniversary of our time leaving, and calls my oldest daughter around her birthday. And he has changed the way that I see the world to a large degree. And he was a coworker. So yeah, I think people with disabilities have an opportunity to remind everybody the power of the diversity of us all. And the perspective can certainly shift when we see one another, regardless of the background or who we are, or what group of people, what box we fit into, that we're all human beings of value. And, if an organizational chart it works like this, right? There's somebody at the top, and then there's all these lines to other people. And I think we feel like that should be how human beings are valued. But I like to say this is a good illustration of communication and decision making. But when it comes to how human beings are valued, the paper works like that. It's flat. Nobody has any more value than anybody else. So regardless of what group we ask about, I feel like that's true.
Yeah.